The Book of Lamentations is in the section of the Jewish canon called the Writings. It is connected with Jeremiah because of its similarity to Jeremiah's personal laments that we find in that book. Sometimes the poems in Lamentations, however, are written in the plural and sometimes in the singular, and rather than seeing them as specifically Jeremiah speaking, they are probably meant to be seen as the laments of the people as a whole, although it is possible that it is Jeremiah speaking for the people. Because of this connection with Jeremiah, in Christian Bibles it is placed right afterwards. In the Jewish canon, it is part of a smaller unit of the writings called the Megillot, 5 books that are read on festival days. Song of Songs is read on the Sabbath and at Passover. The Book of Ruth is read during Shavuot, also called the Feast of Weeks or Pentecost. Lamentations is read on the 9th of Av. Av is a name of a month, and it commemorates the destruction of the temple, not only the temple in 586 BCE, but also the one in 70 CE. Ecclesiastes is read at the Feast of Sukkot or the Feast of Tabernacles, and Esther is read at Purim, the celebration of the Jews' deliverance from potential death in the Persian Empire. In liturgical churches that celebrate Tenebrae during the week leading up to Easter, passages from Lamentations are read, along with Psalms and other scripture passages. Tenebrae, which means darkness, is an ancient service in which you have at the beginning of the service numerous candles in this sort of pyramid structure lit. And as the service progresses, gradually the candles are extinguished until there is only the one on top, the Christ candle. But even that then is removed from the sanctuary, or in some traditions extinguished. Bells are tolled. Sometimes a sound is made to symbolize an earthquake. At the very end of the service, the Christ candle is brought back or relit to signify looking forward to Easter. It's a very lovely and beautiful service if you ever have a chance to go to one. Lamentations has 5 poems that are called laments because they are crying out in distress. As we saw in the video on poetry, they are written in kina meter, and this is a rhythm of stress that is found in laments, and it has a 3/2 stress pattern. So you have 3 units that have stress in the first half of the verse, and then 2 units that have stress in the second. So here you can see 1, 2, 3. That's the 3, and then the 2 here. So the Lord is good to those who wait for him. That's the 3 stress pattern. And then to the soul that seeks him. That's the 2 stress pattern. In Hebrew, that's 5 words, 3 and 2. Each of the laments in chapters 1 through 4 is written in an acrostic form. And this means that successive lines each start with successive letters of the alphabet. It would be as if you wrote a poem in which the first sentence started with A, the second sentence started with B, the third C, and so on. So you can see here that in Lamentations 1 through 3, the first line begins with an aleph, a beit is the next, gimel the next, dalet, hey, and so on. And these are successive letters of the Hebrew alphabet. This shows that although the poem conveys great distress and really involves the careful reader in understanding the grief and almost despair of Lamentations, it actually is very, very carefully crafted. This is not a spontaneous outburst. And this is because spontaneous outbursts rarely end up having the power to really affect other people and involve other people in the grief. Rather, the more well-crafted a poem is, the more it pulls the reader in. Here are just some of the themes. Jerusalem is likened to a widow or a vassal, someone who is alone and unloved. How lonely sits the city that was full of people. How like a widow has she become. She that was a princess among the cities has become a vassal. In verse 3, Judah has gone into exile because of affliction and hard servitude. And there is the sense that it is the Lord who has afflicted his people. Is it nothing to you, all you who pass by? Look and see if there is any sorrow like my sorrow, which was brought upon me, which the Lord inflicted on the day of his fierce anger. And also in chapter 3, I am the man who has seen affliction under the rod of his wrath. He has driven and brought me into darkness without any light. Surely against me he turns his hand again and again the whole day long. There are very poignant descriptions of the children suffering in Jerusalem. My eyes are spent with weeping. My soul is in tumult. My heart is poured out in grief because of the destruction of the daughter of my people, because infants and babes faint in the streets of the city. They cry to their mothers, "Where is bread and wine?" as they faint like wounded men in the streets of the city, as their life is poured out on their mother's bosom. The very inheritance of the people has been lost, turned over to strangers. Their homes are now homes to aliens. They have become orphans, fatherless, their mothers like widows. We must pay for the water we drink. The wood we get must be bought. They are under a yoke and have no rest. Yet at the same time, there are signs of hope within Lamentations. The people hope in the steadfast love of the Lord and long for restoration. You will find this particular set of verses familiar, But this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases, his mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning, great is thy faithfulness. But this is in the context of great destruction and grief. Lamentation ends with a desire, a calling out to the Lord. Restore us to thyself, O Lord, that we may be restored. Renew our days as of old. Or hast thou utterly rejected us? Art thou exceedingly angry with us?